Good evening and welcome back to blackdoctor.org. I am your host, Ask Dr. Renee, and tonight we are going to talk about diabetes because the month of November is National Diabetes Month. Not that we shouldn't talk about diabetes every day of the year because it is such a huge problem in our community, but tonight we're going to talk about diabetes. We have Dr. Kelly, who has been here a million times before. Dr. Kelly is our favorite endocrinologist, diabetes specialist, and she will have all the information. So I know for a fact that somebody knows somebody that has diabetes. If it isn't you, it's a relative or a friend. So do me a favor, share this to everyone because we're going to give tips and tricks. Dr. Kelly is amazing at her job and is able to get her patients off of insulin and get them, just through diet and exercise. So you definitely want to hear what she has to say because although a lot of people think doctors are always trying to push medications, her first plan of action is trying to not get you on medicine. So we will hear from her, and then we will hear from Bernetta Knighton, who is a patient who has type 1 diabetes. And we will talk about the difference between type 1 and type 2 tonight as well, so you can understand that and how to find out if you have type 1 or type 2. So please make sure you share this on Facebook, share this on YouTube, share, get it out there. We greatly appreciate it. And we will get started. Good evening, ladies.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So I am so excited because I never have a patient. It's always just me and Dr. Kelly. So today we actually have a real patient. I'm so excited. So first, Dr. Kelly, I would like you to tell people what's the difference between type 1 and type 2?
Okay, so basically diabetes occurs when you have too much sugar in your bloodstream, too much glucose in your bloodstream. And insulin is the hormone that's responsible to take glucose from the bloodstream into the cells where it's used for energy, and glucose is our main source of energy. So in patients who have type 1 diabetes, it's an autoimmune process where their immune system makes antibodies. With the whole COVID era, we've learned a lot about what antibodies mean. So with type 1 diabetes, the immune system makes antibodies that attack your pancreas and causes your pancreas to not make insulin. Type 1 diabetes usually happens in children, adolescents, and it cannot be, right now there's no cure for type 1 diabetes. It cannot be reversed. However, with type 2 diabetes, the pancreas makes insulin just fine, but because of obesity or being overweight, the insulin just doesn't work well. So the pancreas makes more and more insulin. So in the initial stages of type 2 diabetes, we have what we call insulin resistance. But over time, you find that even type 2 diabetics end up on insulin because over time, the pancreas burns out. Type 2 diabetes more so happens in adults, but as our population as a whole is getting heavier and heavier, we're seeing more type 2 cases occur in childhood as well.
So back in the day, we used to call type 1 diabetes juvenile diabetes. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole organization, the Juvenile Diabetes Association. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, in my high school, there was a fundraiser yearly, and they donated to that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Just small tidbit I just remembered. But so nowadays, though, as in Bernetta's case, and we'll hear her story shortly, not necessarily do you have to be an adult to get type 2 diabetes anymore. So, they're finding it in younger and younger. I mean, preteens are getting type 2 diabetes, and that is really solely because of our diet and lack of exercise, unfortunately. So Bernetta, please tell us how, because Bernetta, first of all, is an amazing blogger. What is the blog?
BernettaStyle.com.
And so you guys have to check it out. But she actually I know Bernetta personally, and so I, of course, saw and was like, wait a minute, she has diabetes? Because we were at a conference and we were eating, and so it just was something that I saw her doing something. I was like, oh. But so because I'm me, I talked to her about it. But she actually came forth on her blog. Was that last year or the year before last year?
2018.
2018. She came out on her blog and talked about her journey. And so you guys can check that blog post out. But Bernetta, please tell people, what were your signs and symptoms, and how did you come to your diagnosis?
Okay, I was diagnosed in 2015. I was 38 years old at the time, and I get my physicals every year. I eat healthy. At least I thought I was eating healthy, exercising all the time. I've exercised my whole life. I was a track star, so it just continued on. And the year I was diagnosed, maybe like 6 months before, I was using the bathroom 2 or 3 times an hour. I was very tired. Like I had started a new job, and literally when I came home, I had to lay down before I could even interact with my children. Like I needed to lay down. I was very thirsty all the time. And then one time, well, not one time, a few times I was driving and my eyes started getting blurry. And I'm like, what is this? Like I'm hitting my eyes, like my eyes are getting blurry. And I'm like, what is going on? And so I went to WebMD and, diabetes came up and I'm like, what? And so I get my physicals every year. So this was maybe from September through December. My birthday's in January. So when I went for my physical in January, I said, can you test me for diabetes? So she did the numbers and all my regular numbers came back normal in range as they always do. But the glucose number was 333. Now, it should be between 70 and 120. So she called me. She said, I think something is wrong. All your numbers are good, but this glucose is high. It's probably a fluke. Come on back in. Went back in. It was still 300 and something. She just immediately thought I had type 2 diabetes, put me on metformin, said, come back in a few days. Let's test it again. It was still high. So they ran another test. And then she put me on insulin, still thinking I'm type 2. And then they ran another test, which is the C-peptide test to make sure, the difference between type 1 and 2. And it came back, I was type 1. And then I immediately started seeing an endocrinologist and went through, depression, went through all the stages, why me, depression and all that. But then 2018, like I put it on, I was just ready to live, didn't care, and it was like, hey, this is me. I have 3 children to live for and I want to live. And, it's just been uphill from there, mentally from there. But yeah, I was sad the first like year, 2 years, 3 years. So even now, sometimes I have my low dips, because type 1, I don't know how type 2s have to do, but I know as type 1, it's a every minute thing, with your food and making sure you're in range with your blood. And it's just like, but God is still good.
Yes. And I mean, she travels, like she said, she's a wife, she's a mother, she does a lot and she's still able to do all those things, even though she has to, type 1 diabetes. So Kelly, what are the chances of somebody at 38 being diagnosed with type 1?
So what Bernetta has is probably called LADA, which stands for latent autoimmune diabetes in adulthood. It's kind of called type 1.5 because usually it develops after the age of 30. And patients have the same antibodies that a type 1 child or teenager would have, but they don't have as high titers or high amounts. And they might not have, like, there are a few common antibodies that we look for, maybe 3 or 4 of them. So a lot of patient might have 1 or 2, while a type 1 patient might have more different, more of the types. So, so we call that kind of like type 1.5. And most of those patients, you treat them like type 1 because they can get really sick and go into what we call diabetic ketoacidosis if they go without insulin. So
go ahead.
Any patient that I see, even now, who is maybe not as overweight or as obese as the typical type 2, or if they don't have that really strong family history of diabetes, I always suspect that they might have LADA, and I do the antibody testing just to confirm what type of diabetes they really have.
So my question is, what changes did you have to make, Bernetta, when they told you this, besides the fact you have to take medication now?
That was the big thing, that having to get used to taking insulin and being told you're going to have to be on this for the rest of your life, but I thought I was eating good. Like I said, I was already exercising. That hasn't stopped at all in the 6 years I've had this. But on my journey, I went into more of a deep dive about food and learned about fat and how that plays a part in raising your blood glucose levels, and how, for me, like a low fat, whole food, plant-based diet is the best. Yes, I do eat meat and then, have a treat sometimes, but for my numbers are the best when I am on a low food plant-based diet.
Okay. And I mean, you heard she does treat
Low
herself.
fat. I said low food, low fat, plant-based.
Low fat. We got you. We got you. So you heard her. She does eat. She does treat herself sometimes, but plant-based works best for her blood sugar. Now, Kelly, what do you tell your patients that have LADA?
For any patient with diabetes, I recommend, they have to count their carbs. And I usually recommend, so a low carb diet is when you're less than 130 grams per day. And you can divide that up, amounts to your 3 meals and maybe 3 snacks. I usually say try to aim for your meals. They say 60 grams, but I would say less than 45 grams of carbs for your meals and less than 15 grams of carbs for your snacks. My rule of thumb is, stick to whatever diet you can maintain. I see some people go do the ketogenic diet, they lose a lot of weight, bring their blood sugars down, but then they can't sustain that kind of lifestyle and they regain everything they lost plus more. So a good options are, Mediterranean diet, low carb diets have been proven to be effective as well, plant-based diets, but whatever diet that you can maintain for the long haul.
So you mentioned the ketogenic diet. What is because you just said diabetic ketoacidosis, DKA, is a bad thing. So what is this keto stays that the keto, because I know that a lot of people, the ketogenic diet, they actually check their urine.
Yeah, so I would not recommend anyone who has type 1 diabetes or LADA to do the ketogenic diet. I would say that's more so for a type 2 patient. So remember, I just said that a low carb diet is when you're less than 130 grams. So keto diet is when you're actually less than 30 grams of carbs per day. So it's ultra low carbs. So what that does is that, remember I said at the beginning that glucose is the main source of energy for cells. So when you really restrict your glucose intake, it shifts your body from burning glucose into burning fat for energy. And a byproduct of fat metabolism is ketones. Like even when you're fasting, your body makes ketones because it's burning fat. That's why patients on a ketogenic diet can also check their ketones in their urine to make sure that they're within that range. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. Interesting. So we have a comment here that is similar to what we said. A new study in, I don't know what PLOS is, confirms that I've been telling folks for years, type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle disease and it's reversible if not too severe.
So there's been debate about reversibility versus going into remission. And so once you've had those metabolic changes with type 2 diabetes, you're always at risk for developing it again. So we talk more about remission of diabetes as opposed to reversing it.
So my other thing is, so there's a pre-diabetic phase that happens to people that get type 2 diabetes. What is that pre-diabetes, and is there a way for you to not go into full-blown diabetes with a pre-diabetic diagnosis?
Most definitely. So in pre-diabetes, your blood sugars aren't normal, but they're not high enough to be classified as diabetes. And there are 3 main ways of diagnosing diabetes. One, you can check a test called the hemoglobin A1C, and that's an average 3-month blood sugar test. And a normal A1C is when you're 5.6% or lower. And to have diabetes, your number has to be 6.5 or higher. So anything between 5.7 and 6.4, we call that pre-diabetes. A normal fasting blood sugar is when you're less than 100. To have diabetes, you have to be 126 or higher. So anything between 100 to 125 is pre-diabetes. And then finally, we can also give patients what we call an oral glucose tolerance test, or we give them something sugary to drink. A lot of pregnant women have done this before during pregnancy as well. We give a little bit more, I believe, when you're not pregnant. But then we check your blood sugars 2 hours after you drink this drink. And if it's above 200 milligram per deciliter, you have diabetes. So pre-diabetes is not normal, but not high enough to be considered having diabetic. And most of the time, people do progress from having pre-diabetes to having full-blown diabetes if they don't make lifestyle changes. So there was actually a big study that compared metformin to lifestyle changes in terms of preventing the progression of prediabetes to diabetes. And guess what? The lifestyle changes group did better, be better than even metformin. And what they did was that they lost about 7 to 10% of their body weight. So if you're 200 pounds, that means losing about 20 pounds, right? About 15 to 20 pounds. How did they do that? They went on Mediterranean diet as well as they exercised 150 minutes per week. So all of the recommendations, the CDC guidelines, American Diabetes Association guidelines, they all recommend at least 150 minutes of exercise per week. And that's half an hour, 5 days a week. If you're someone that, you don't exercise, you've never done it, just start off at walking for 10 to 15 minutes. I know it's getting colder now, but I recommend to my patients, if dinner is your heaviest meal, go for a walk after dinner. Help to bring those blood sugars down that way.
That is, and you did hear her. You don't have to do a straight 30 minutes. You could do 2 15s, 3 10s, whatever, break it up, but you got to get 30 minutes in a day.
Mm-hmm.
Got to get 30 minutes in a day. And I know also water is very helpful too.
Definitely. Water can flush the sugar out. Think about it that way. Water can flush the sugar out. I mean, when your blood sugars are really high, it overwhelms your kidneys. So you start to urinate sugar out, and water follows sugar. So that leads to some dehydration. So make sure that you're really well hydrated.
Yeah. So I had an uncle who we swore was going to outlive us all. He unfortunately died during COVID, but he was told that he had diabetes, and he was like, what? And he said, no, I'm not accepting that. And that man walked and changed his diet and drank water. He lost weight. And do you know, he did get put on insulin, and they had to take him off because his blood sugar was so low that he had I think he went into DKA. He had passed out because his blood sugar just bottomed out. And the doctors told him, no, don't take any more of this. You don't need it. And, it was just because he walked and he drank water, he changed his diet. And this was a 80-plus-year-old man.
Yeah, I mean, initially when your blood sugars are extremely high, they actually damage the pancreas. And then you find yourself in this vicious cycle where high blood sugars damage the pancreas makes less insulin, which leads to higher blood sugars, which leads to more damage. So usually if someone comes to me and their A1C is like above 9%, the recommendation, 9-10%, the recommendation is to really start insulin. But if I've seen so many patients, when they really get their diet together, get some exercise in, for type 2 patients, I should specify, for type 2, not type 1s, for type 2, I've seen people be able to come off of insulin. And even for type 1, there's something called a honeymoon period where initially in their diagnosis, after their blood sugars come down, their beta cells kind of have a little bit of recovery and kind of push out some more insulin. So like in the first 6 months to a year, a type 1 might even need less insulin, but type 1s should never stop their insulin. Please don't stop insulin.
So somebody said, what type of diabetes where you only take meds and no insulin?
That's probably more of a type 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Bernetta, since you are a mother and you have a family, does everyone eat like you do?
We try. Me and my husband to, eat healthy. But they still eat we still give them some nachos and cheese sometimes, try not to do a lot of dairy, even outside of diabetes. Dairy is just not good for you. But yeah, we try to do as healthy as we can because they also eat at school and we can't control what they eat at school. So we want to make sure when they're with us, they're getting, healthy. But yeah, they get a little snack here and there.
Okay. And then Kelly, is there any genetic component to type 1 diabetes?
Yes, definitely. There's a stronger genetic component with type 2 diabetes. You see type 2 diabetes coming through in every single generation. But for type 1, there is, I'm blanking on the percentages now, but like if your mother has it, if you have one parent who has it, you have like I want to say 3% risk. If you have a sibling who has it, you have a higher percent risk. So yes, but for type 1, I see it skip generations a lot. So you might see like a grandparent and then like a grandchild. But for type 2, it comes through in almost every generation.
My dad had type 2, and then his dad had diabetes too, but I don't know what type.
What
He
type?
died when I was 5, but probably
Okay.
type 2. But
Right.
yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I just was thinking that might be something, just to pay, see if there was some sort of link in there. I knew type 2, and I just had this discussion earlier with somebody. I felt like type 2, because of most of the time it's due to what we're eating, you might be doomed if you know what I mean? If that's what your mother fed you and that's what the grandma fed the mother, then you might be doomed. Unless you know better, and we can't do better unless we know better, and that's why it's so important for us to figure out how to get out of the slave mentality of the way we eat. Just
I feel that
because,
way too.
right?
And Dr. Kelly can tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like type 2 is so preventable, because what you eat and how you take care of yourself. Just like if you do that, you can reduce it, possibly reverse it. Like you said, it's how you eat. But if you eat like your mom and your mom eat like your grandmother, it's going to continue. So it's like we have to educate ourselves on how to eat better and take care of our bodies.
Yeah, and I think that it's unfortunate when people, make fun of people that are overweight and stuff. A lot of them don't know how to eat. This isn't something that you just wake up and you know what to do. You have to be taught the proper way to eat. A lot of people don't realize that when we make greens and the water turns green, that means that the greens really aren't healthy anymore because all the nutrients are in the water. But people don't realize it doesn't take all day to cook greens. You do not need to cook them all day. And when you do that, you cook the nutrients out. So it's just little things that, unfortunately, in our community, for whatever reason, we are not, we just don't know this information. And then, because we were the slaves and we were fed the chitlins and all the things, we don't have to eat that stuff anymore. I mean, and I'm saying, and I understand that some people like them, and that's fine. But, you have to do these things in moderation.
I was going to ask, would you agree that sometimes we learn it too late too? We've been stuck in this habit, and you might not even get to it till you're like 30, and by then you're used to the fried chicken and cornbread and everything else, and it's like now you have to mentally shift, like, okay, I have to eat a salad, or I have to eat some quinoa, so by the time we do learn it, we're already in this habit. So that's another thing, just like reteaching yourself.
And also, I think exercise really isn't a part of most of our lives, I mean, so most days I come home, I don't feel like exercising, but I do because I don't want to get diabetes or high blood pressure or high cholesterol, so, and that also isn't mirrored to our children either. So we're eating the wrong things and then we're not moving enough. So we find ourselves in just a generational cycle of diabetes, and, I've taken care of mother and daughter in the same visit coming, and it's just really sad to see that being passed on.
And see, Bernetta, me and Kelly, we weren't athletes. Kelly, you weren't an athlete, were you?
No, definitely not.
I didn't think so. So we weren't athletes. So this whole working out thing, because I am not a morning person, but Kelly knows I work out in the morning. And if it doesn't get done before 12, it's not happening today. So, and we're Peloton ladies. So
yeah, I can't do the bike, but I do work out.
Bernetta, I said the same thing.
Well, I have a bike that I ride around in my neighborhood, but I got the big seat, so.
I have a big seat on my Peloton, because there was no way. I got on that other seat one day and I never got on it again. Yeah. I was like, this is for the birds. But and I told Kelly, so she knew ahead of time. But no, I'm not working out. Just wasn't something. Now I will say I was a competitive dancer, so that was my exercise because I went to dance class almost every day. Because I was in the competition group, but my sister was the athlete. So she was the one that was running and stuff. With my asthma, thankfully I could do dance, but running and all that stuff, my asthma was horrible anyway, and then exercising would just have made it worse. So I'm grateful that it's okay now, and I also do know, and it's in my book, Mommy, I Can't Breathe, I talk about how exercise can actually improve your asthma. So there are so many benefits to exercise. I just recently read an article about how exercising can prevent you from getting Alzheimer's and dementia. Because
can help in every way.
Every way. There's so many things that it can do. And so it's so important. And you guys, you don't need a gym membership. I hate gyms. You don't have to have a Peloton. I literally walked off a whole lot of weight And that was just walking the city of Chicago.
Can I also say that insulin for people that have diabetes, exercise is like insulin. It can bring your blood glucose down. Like she said, after dinner, you can take a walk and it'll bring it down versus taking insulin. So that's that. I exercise because it's good for me and I like the benefits of just being healthy all around, and I like to look good in my clothes. But one of the benefits of exercise is that it acts like insulin and can bring your blood glucose down. So think about that if you have.
The reason why that happens is because exercise lowers is one good way of lowering insulin resistance. So it basically makes your body more sensitive to insulin. So it works a lot better when you exercise.
So we have some questions coming in. Is there a free diet plan for diabetics? And if so, where can I find one? So before you say that, Kelly, I will say that I know people that have recently been diagnosed with diabetes who, for whatever reason, I'm not sure where or how it happens, but somehow these people are never given any type of direction when it comes to counting carbs or, this is the way you should try to eat. And I don't know why that is. And I know Kelly doesn't do things that way, but for some reason, there are a lot of people out there like this lady, and they're like, I'm lost. What do I do?
So, most patients, for most insurance companies, they do cover diabetes education. So every newly diagnosed diabetic should be referred to a diabetic educator. So if you haven't been and you're watching this, you need to ask your primary care doctor or your endocrinologist to refer you over. So you can meet with a registered dietitian or a certified diabetes educator. You can also go on American Diabetes Association. They have some really good resources there about understanding what type 1, what type 2 is, understanding what your glucose, what your blood sugar target should be, how to eat well. But also, ask your doctor questions. Ask them what do they recommend that you eat. And that's why it's also so important to be checking your blood sugars, because you can see, like, everyone is different. Someone might say oatmeal doesn't move my blood sugar at all because it has so much fiber in it. And somebody else might say, when I eat oatmeal, my blood sugar goes up to 300. But you're not going to know if you're not checking your blood sugars. So, listen to your body, listen to how you respond to certain foods. The foods that really raise your blood sugars, either cut it out completely or have a smaller portion.
So do you know of any place where they could get
So you can Google American Diabetes Association, ADA, and they have some good patient resources there.
Thank you. And then, okay, Jocelyn, I don't understand your question. How severe type 2? So if you can type in some more, I'll try and get that answered. Do diabetic females have symptoms different from males? My grandmother had excessive vaginal itching no matter what time of the month it is.
So what you're talking about, your grandmother probably had recurrent yeast infections. So if you think about it, bacteria, viruses, yeast, or fungi, they love sugar. They thrive in sugar. So actually, a symptom of really bad diabetes is thrush, which is oral yeast, oral candidiasis. And women also have vaginal candidiasis, which leads to the itching and the white discharge. So that's probably what was happening with your grandma.
Yeah. So, and thrush, you guys, is that white stuff. If they ever say your white stuff on the back of that's what thrush is.
On your tongue, yeah.
On your tongue, yeah. In changing my diet, I learned that I crave what I eat. I started with cooking oils and then swapped granulated sugar to monk fruit. Lifestyle changes can be done one step at a time. Totally agree. And you know what? If you really get you somebody good, you can honestly, and you can Google and see, there are so many recipes that there's a healthy version of it now. And so you can still have fried chicken, but it was never fried, it was baked. Or there's that wonderful air fryer that a whole bunch of people bought during the pandemic. I got mine before that. But the air fryer works very well. You only have to put like a teaspoon of oil in there, and you can have fried chicken. You could have baked French fries that are air fried. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do with the air fryer. But even before air fryers, I was making oven baked fried chicken because I love fried chicken, but I didn't particularly want to fry foods because I was just nervous about it. But I knew that it was healthier if I did baked. So baked oven fried chicken does taste good and can be crispy too and all that great stuff. But you guys, there's so many ways to eat what we want to eat. And just a healthier version. Like, I love mashed potatoes, but if I ate as many mashed potatoes as I want to eat, one, I'd be big as a house, and two, because diabetes runs in my family, I promise you I'd have type 2 diabetes between the rice and the mashed potatoes. I'd be in trouble. But mashed cauliflower, if you put in the, I use this no salt thing that is no sodium. You put that in there, put a little bit of butter. You wouldn't know it wasn't mashed potatoes. It tastes delicious. And actually, there's a video. My sister, Chef Alicia Nicole, she was here on Black Doctor, and she made that live for you guys. So perhaps I'll find the link and put it in the post for you. But delicious. What else is there? Rice. You mentioned quinoa. Quinoa, if you cook it the same way you would cook your rice, meaning if you, like for me, my grandmother taught me you put onions to season your rice. You put that in the quinoa, it tastes exactly the same. What you don't realize is rice really doesn't have a flavor. The other thing is you could always switch from white rice to brown rice.
That too.
And then, Dr. Kelly and I have talked about it a million times before. I told her that I started eating Banza pasta. Banza pasta is chickpea pasta. But you guys, it tastes just like the regular old white, pasta that's full of the carbs. But it's chickpea pasta. Chickpeas are protein, legumes. So there's so many ways around things. You just have to go look for them. You have to look for them. Now, I will say that for type 1, particularly because you guys have to be on insulin, but if you, as a type 2, have to be on insulin, there is amazing things out there for everyone in our audience. You probably know who Damon Dash is. Dame Dash talked about his type 2 diabetes. No, he's type 1. And he has, I think it's called Dexcom. He has that, and if you go to his Instagram, you can see he talked all about it. He's done videos and stuff. That's what he has, and that is similar to what you have, Bernetta, right?
Correct. For one, I didn't know he had type 1, so I'm going to go to his Instagram when we get off this call. I'm always interested when I see other type 1s. Did y'all know Halle Berry had type 1?
Yes, I did. But Halle Berry was one of the type 1s that was diagnosed many, 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 many years ago.
Yeah, and she also does the keto diet too, but that works for her,
Wow. But Dame Dash is similar to you. I believe he just was diagnosed in the last 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So go check it out.
Yes, and I use a CGM controlled glucose monitor. It's called Freestyle Libre 2. It's actually right here on my arm. It's the size of a quarter. And I just check it with my phone, and I can see what my blood sugar is, my blood glucose, and see my range. It's actually life-saving because this one has alarm. So if I go low at night, it will go off. And I'm going to tell you, like, when I first started, living with this, I got scared because, if you go low at night, you can die. You can, and I would tell my husband, check on me. Check on me during the night. And it was just a fear because I didn't know. I was learning how to deal with this. Now when I go low, I can feel it. I could tell, okay, I need to get me something to eat. Just like when I'm too high, I want to lay down. So I can say, okay, I need to check my blood, take some insulin. But so that's a good thing with my CGM. It goes off in the middle of the night. And if it's too high, it'll go off as well. I have it set.
So I had a mentee that was type 1 as well, but she, I met her in college, so I think that she was somebody that knew this for a very long time. She wore a pump, and so she had her insulin, and it was right there, and she would, hit the button or whatever. And this is before you could check your blood sugar from something as fabulous as Libre or Dexcom. But she had a pump, and that's how she administered her insulin. And you guys, to understand that CGM, like Libre and Dexcom, they prevent you from having to stick your finger.
Yeah. And I did have a pump.
That's what you had when I saw you.
Yeah. I got diagnosed in 2015. I think I got the pump 2017, and I had it for maybe 2 years, but then I switched jobs. Honestly, when I was on the pump, I was on Obamacare, and it was free. But then when I got this good job with the good insurance, it went up to like $1,000 a month. And I'm like, how would I got Obamacare? It's free. But then I have this nice, good paying job, good insurance. And now it's $1,000 out of my own pocket a month. So I went back to injecting, and I use these pens, insulin pens. And so I take 2 insulins. I take a basal, at night, a 24-hour insulin at Lantus, and then I take a quick acting insulin, which is this Humalog before my meals.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really unfortunate
go
that
ahead.
like a lot of the medicines for diabetes are just super expensive, and it's baffling because, as an insurance company, wouldn't I want to prevent a hospitalization or surgery, or an ER visit? No, but they don't want to pay for insulin, especially a lot of older patients who are on fixed incomes, like they just struggle with getting their medication. So a few things you can do. A lot of these, if you have diabetes, the cheapest insulin available, unfortunately, does not come in a pen. It comes in the good old vial and a syringe, but you can get, Walmart has a brand that's about, I want to say between $15 to $20 a vial. And you don't even need to get a prescription for it. So you can speak with your doctor if you really can't afford your insulin. A lot of these manufacturers, the pharmaceutical companies, have patient assistance programs. So you can go online, put in the drug that you're on, and just like for example, if you're on Lantus, put Lantus patient assistance program, and see if you do qualify for free insulin. Some of my patients, based on their income, they can get insulin for free.
Yeah, with my Lantus, I even use like the manufacturer's discount, and I go to Walmart. I get my prescription filled at Walmart, and one time it came up to like $400, and I'm like, and so even the pharmacist was like, "Hold on, let me," and then she got it down to 99. I was like, "I'll take it." It's amazing how expensive insulin is, but we need it to live. That's the sad part about it, that we need it to live, and they just like overcharge for it.
Yeah. So you need to definitely, especially if it's your grandmother, your grandfather, older relative, please help them out. They are probably not as versed with the internet as you are. Do the search for them, help them fill out the paperwork so that they can get this discount on their medications. Because what I do know that happens, because I've dealt with a lot of the elderly population, is they'll skip taking their medication. And we don't want anything to happen to our loved ones. So please, if you can, help them out, because these programs are there to help them, and whoever else needs them. But sometimes accessibility to the program is the problem. So
and also like rather than just not take your medicines, like let your doctor know. Sometimes I prescribe something and a patient would come back 3 months later and say, "Hey, that was too expensive. I couldn't get it." I'm like, you could have called me and let me know so I can come up with something different. A lot of the newer we have so many new medicines for type 2 diabetes. And the treatment algorithm has changed over the last year or two. Like, there are medicines that treat diabetes but also reduce the risk of having heart failure and reduce the risk of having a heart attack. There are other medicines that reduce the risk of having kidney disease. So there are lots of new medicines out there. A lot of people can't afford it. So if your doctor prescribes one of these new flashier medicines and it's too expensive, give them a call back and see if they can change it to something else.
yeah, and especially because this happens so often, the front desk staff is usually very versed on, let me give you, why don't you try this, or we'll send in the prescription for this. So it's not a big deal. Just call and tell them, my insurance only covered this much. Is there something that covers more or whatever? And they probably know the options, or they actually might know, your insurance, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that's the insurance you had, because this is something that happens all the time, unfortunately.
And pharmacists too sometimes, because they know of specials as well.
Yes,
if you happen to be at the pharmacist and the bill comes up high, just ask them, do they have any specials or any coupons? Because many times the pharmacy tech has looked out for me and I didn't even say anything. They just said, you know what, this is too expensive. Let me check if there's something I can do.
Yeah, definitely. It's unfortunate, but at least there are options. So let's try to exercise all the options we can before you end up paying some hefty bill. And please always speak to your doctor. If there is a problem, please talk to your doctor, because you going without some life-saving drug means that you could die, and your family doesn't want that to happen to you. So please talk to your doctor. I heard a story recently of somebody who went without their insulin for a long period of time because of some insurance something, and didn't say anything to anyone. And I'm like, No, you need to say something because there's things that can be done. There's ways things can be helped. And, there's always an alternative.
Can I ask
Like,
Dr. Kelly a question?
oh, yeah, definitely.
So since you said about like the lowest or the cheapest insulin is at Walmart, to you, is there a difference in insulins? Like, is there one insulin that's better than the other?
Most certainly.
Okay.
So unfortunately, the insulins at our Walmart are some of the ones that have been around for decades. Sometimes they have a higher risk of hypoglycemia or low blood sugars. Obviously, because it's in a vial, it's not as convenient to use. The the newer shots, like what you're on, you take once a day. The older human insulin, like you got to take that like twice a day for the longer acting one. So they're not all equal,
Okay.
but it's still better than not being on anything at all.
Okay. Can you say what's the best insulin? What's that top notch insulin out there?
I mean, there's so many options. Like, you're on Lantus. There are newer insulins. Like, there's one called Tresiba. There's kind of like a concentrated type of Lantus called Toujeo. There's so many other newer insulins and other like type 2 tablets out there as well. And even for type 2s, there are also injectables. And it's not insulin, but they're injectables that you can take once a week. You've seen, I know we've all seen
the commercial.
We've all seen the Ozempic ad. Like my brother, whenever he sees me, he sings, "Oh, Ozempic." Anyways, those aren't using. If they're using type 1, it's off label, but they're approved for type 2 patients, and they can help with weight loss. So there are lots of new agents out there that you should be talking to your doctor about.
Okay. My doctor once tried to give me or show me an insulin that you can breathe in.
Yes, there's.
I was like, okay, but I didn't do it. But she said something that you can. But I guess I wouldn't know if I'm actually. For one, I always have sinus issues, so I wouldn't even probably get it all in my nose. But the second is I wouldn't know if I'm taking the right amount. Breathing it in. If I don't know. But
so before, I've never really used the inhaled insulin either. But before you prescribe that, technically you're supposed to check to make sure that the patient has good, pulmonary function. Someone who's always stuffed up might not be the right candidate for that either. And usually is in patients who are not on a whole lot of insulin.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just it's great though that there's all these new things because that means that they are doing research and eventually, God willing, they will find a cure for type 1 diabetes.
Yes. I'm on the email list of the JDF group that you talked about. So I get the emails of the new technology they're coming up with for type 1. And I get excited, because I'm just believing like in my lifetime, like I won't be type 1 forever. I know it's no cure, but the way they're working with technology, you never know. It's getting closer and closer to them coming up with something to help our pancreas. So
I think somebody I knew was working on many years ago some scientific project with the pancreas, but I can't remember. But yeah, you never know. I mean, crazier things have happened. And so I think that over time, it'll get better and better and better and better and better. Because they've come a long way now. Especially, those kids that had to stick themselves. And who else had type 1? It just came to me was Fife Dog from Tribe Called Quest.
Oh, yeah, type 1. Okay.
Yeah. And he was embarrassed about it. And so he wouldn't tell anyone. And so he just never really took care of it. So then I don't know if you knew, but he had a kidney transplant. And then he died maybe 5 years later, if that, I don't think.
Yeah, I know he passed away of diabetes. I guess I just thought it was type 2 when I read, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
You gotta take care of yourself. It's not even a daily thing. It's a minute by minute thing,
Yeah.
You got it. It's really tough. I mean, for someone like yourself who's type 1, there's nothing that you could have done to prevent that, right? But for a type 2 patient, like it's really preventable. And I remember when I was starting my endocrinology fellowship, like the very first day, what they did was they put a pump on me, but they put obviously like water or normal saline in the pump instead of insulin. And I had to check my blood sugars before I ate. and the pump went off middle of the night. And listen, I yanked that thing out. I could not last for more than one day. I was like, not doing this.
Mhm.
So I could only imagine,
Mhm.
you know, how challenging it is to have to think about what you eat every meal, and having to check your blood sugar before you eat and before you go to bed. You know, it becomes a lot. So if you have type 2 and you're able to not get to a place where you're on insulin or taking lots of medications, like, do what you need to do now, because you don't want to
Yeah.
have to do that.
Exactly. Please listen to your doctors. If they told you you're pre-diabetic, then you ask tons of questions and do research to figure out how can you make sure it does not go into type 2 diabetes, because you can read anywhere. You don't have to listen to us. It tells you everywhere that there are things you can do to not have type 2 diabetes. And like I said, diabetes runs in my family. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to have diabetes. So what do I need to do not to have it? And like everyone in my generation was like, we don't want to do it. And Renee, you're the doctor. What do we need to do to make sure we don't have it? And I'll say, knock on wood, none of us have it. And we're all adults. So, I mean, obviously things could change. But right now, none of us have it. But it's so important that you know, and you can enjoy things. Like I'm West Indian. We eat rice. But you can switch to brown rice, and I promise you won't know the difference. I've made brown rice and peas, and you won't know the difference unless you're staring hard at it. If you season it the same, it's going to taste the same.
I mean, to be honest, Renee, like, you do tell a difference initially. I mean, just being honest, girl, be honest. But
I didn't, so. But you know what? It's been so, because right now I'm eating rice and peas. Like I ate rice and peas yesterday, regular white rice. But I eat so much brown rice, I really don't.
Right. So my point was, like, the first couple of times you're going to be like, what is yucky? But after a while, like, your taste buds get used to it. Like, get over it. It's food, you know? Like,
and the thing is seasonings. Seasonings are the key. Like with everything, seasonings are the key. Don't, like I said, don't kill those collard greens. Saute them. Saute them in a pan.
The first time I had, like, I don't really eat a lot of pasta down here, but when I was eating pasta and I switched from the white pasta to the whole wheat pasta, the first time I was like, I don't know if I like this. But the more I did it, I could not go back to eating normal pasta because my taste buds got used to it. So I really think that we have to start training our taste buds.
Yes. And you know what? I'm allergic to whole wheat, which is why I never could go to whole wheat pasta. But I can eat the Banza pasta because it was chickpea.
Right.
And there's another one that I used to eat. The brand is called Dreamfield. Actually, Sherry Shepherd, who is somebody who was pre-diabetic, who was able to not turn to type 2 diabetes. She had been their spokesperson. And their website, you could get coupons, and they were in the regular grocery stores. It was great.
Yeah, I've used them before. They don't cause your blood sugar to spike. Somebody else who had type 1 had told me that. She's like, get Dreamfield. They don't spike your blood.
Nice.
Somebody said Trader Joe's has brown basmati rice. I had no idea. No idea. But yeah, you guys, you have to train yourself, and it's like, how bad do you want to live? You know.
Oh yeah, like you just reminded me. I always tell people, I'd rather spend my money on healthy food than medicine. You know what I mean? Like prevention is better than solution. So I'd rather buy my vegetables, my this, than down the line paying for pills, paying for that. You know, you're gonna spend the money which way?
Some kind of way.
Yeah.
The hospital stay, you're missing work, all of these things. You might as well just pay the money and get the healthy food.
Yeah, pay the gym membership or pay the hospital bill. You know, what do you want to do?
Yeah. Seriously. So we're getting towards the end. I want you guys to please let everyone know how to follow you. We'll start with you, Bernetta. I want to make sure that they follow you. And she's doing some amazing nonprofit work that I would love her to talk about. She was actually on the news last night in Tampa about.
Thank you. My website is bernettastyle.com. That is my lifestyle blog. But what I'm most proud of is my nonprofit. It's called the Nighton Project, and that's my last name on the screen, the Nighton Project. And we prepare and collect brand new suitcases for children, or not children, but teens aging out of foster care. And what we put in those suitcases are everyday essentials, because when they turn 18, they don't have college or another place to go or back with family. Guess what? They are instantly homeless, and 9 times out of 10 they're putting their stuff in a trash bag And can you imagine when you were 18, if you had to go to college or just, thinking you're grown and out there on the street with a trash bag? So we want them to know they're valuable, and that we care about them in this next transition. So we collect brand new suitcases, and we will give it to them right as they age out. We're doing a campaign between now through December 15th in hopes of packing the suitcases right before Christmas and delivering it to the foster agencies here in Tampa.
Thank you. And you guys, so please, BurnettaStyle.com is her website, and theknightonproject.com as well, right?
Right. The Knightonproject.org. I'm sorry.
.org.
The
Knightonproject.org.
For
yes.
If you would like to donate or talk more about the Knighton Project.
And Dr. Kelly?
So you guys can find me all over social media at Dr. Kelly Wood MD, and that's DrKellywOodMD. And my website is drkellywoodmd.com as well.
Yes, so Dr. Kelly has done some really amazing webinars to help people to understand about their diabetes. And then she's actually done some coaching too to help them to hopefully transition and get out of having to take insulin or any medication, hopefully, for their type 2 diabetes. They said, what's the pasta? The pasta is Banza. It's BANZA. And then Dreamfields, which is just the way it sounds, Dreamfields, FIELDS. Those are the two pastas that I know are very friendly to diabetics. And actually anybody, because we all need to watch our carb intake, because carbs are full of sugar, in case you all didn't know. And if you haven't heard, sugar is really not your best friend. So, and if you didn't learn anything in COVID, I think that we all learned underlying conditions are anything that you have to be treated for. Let's start with that. Secondly, Black people are dying so quickly from COVID because of obesity, hypertension, and diabetes. And guess what? Diabetes can be the result of obesity and can cause you to have high blood pressure. So, and I guess, you know what, Kelly, really quickly, run down what different systems, I don't think there's any that we could leave out, that diabetes affects.
I mean, you can start from the top of your head and come all the way down to your feet.
Right.
So diabetes basically damages all of the blood vessels and nerves in your body. So it leads to neuropathy, it leads to vasculopathy all over.
Causing
strokes. It can cause stroke. The leading cause of death for patients who have diabetes is heart disease. So a lot of heart disease, kidney disease. Most people on dialysis have diabetes. For men, it can lead to erectile dysfunction. It can lead to retinopathy, that's bleeding of the vessels that supply the retina. So that can lead to blindness. Neuropathy, so the numbness and tingling. You can have a higher risk of having ulcers on your feet because you don't have good blood supply. You have the neuropathy, so the ulcers don't heal. And if you ignore it for long enough, you can potentially even have an amputation from this. So, and I'm sure I'm missing a lot more,
right?
But you can just start from the top of your head and go down. And like, even as Dr. Renee was saying with COVID, like, number one was most people who died, a lot of people who died had diabetes.
Yeah, so definitely everyone, please try to pay attention and do a little bit better. If you just start out by cutting out pop or soda, wherever part of the country you're in, cut that out. You'd be amazed how much sugar is in that can, that one little can. Cut that out. Start with that. Drink a little more water. Then try to drink a few more vegetables. Just gradually try to do better, and you'd be amazed. Your health would improve drastically. So if you have not had your A1C checked, ask your doctor to check your A1C just so you know where you stand. Because in our community, it's so prevalent that it'd be crazy for you not to know where it is. And you need to know what's your glucose, because as Bernetta said, her numbers were normal. It was her glucose that was high. So definitely, these are things that should be checked anyway, but make sure that you know your numbers. So just like you know your blood pressure is this over this all the time, make sure you know where you stand with your A1C, because these are important things to know, because what you don't want is to creep up on you and you missed out on the pre-diabetes and you straight to type 2. You would like a little bit of a warning, I think. So,
Agreed.
But Thank you, ladies, so much. This was lovely. I think that we've helped everyone to get their healthy pasta now, and you guys know how to reach out to these ladies if you have any other questions. I will also add to the post, so I will put their websites and all that good stuff in there. And I'll see you again next Thursday. Thanks, everyone.
Thank